Hermes too fast for you. When the spammer called Blue dies. Oh. Wait, did you just get hurt? Or did you? I don't know.
And this is junior high. Hey guys, you guys are alone up here? Who turned on all the lights?
Lexi.
Lexi, and where's Lexi?
She went downstairs.
Okay, well Lexi will be right back. Lexi does worship. So this is kind of the area. This is the kitchen.
No, stop.
So Lexi should be back, and I will be able to introduce you. Not here right now. So you two can hang, or you can leave her, or you can stay with her. And go back down. Here comes Lexi. Oh, good. There's some here.
Hello, sorry.
Hi, Lexi. It's her first time.
Hello.
To junior high.
Nice to meet you.
This is Dad, and I walked him up.
Nice to meet you.
So you guys know where it is. You know how it is, and now you return to him when you want her. God bless you guys.
Yeah, we just hanging out. We just chilled a little bit. Guys, thinking of not actually doing this stuff. So we usually start a little bit after service. Kids will actually just get early because they can run down and then yeah, and then we sit around like yeah, we go to worship study and then the kids are free to hang out. And there's like little meet up. Oh, and at least it's not more. So I know. The volunteers is actually here. I mean, oh, we're not. Sorry, I'm going to do this real quick.
No problem.
All right. Nice to meet you. Savannah. Hi, my dear. Let's go training again. 7? Oh my goodness. Wow, I love that. Yeah. I can do it. On did well. I did that for you. Yeah. Are you from Chico? Yeah. You can go here. Wait, what? No. No. I went to for their ticket. I want you to try something with it. Red book and cross out. Now should it come down here? TV. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I do too. I'm too big. Yes, they have the best cheer team. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. No, okay, shoot it down. Cute. But yeah, I don't have it. You guys are serious athletes. I don't know how you do it. Yeah. Seriously. Maybe like flips and stuff? Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're so cool. Did you ever take gymnastics? I did. But the teachers, like, we only had like one team in Chico, and the teachers, they just didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. And they all eventually got fired. Oh no. There's only like 5 left. They used to have like over 30. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're about to get moved on that. They don't like that. That is the real South. They're gonna keep you at your level. So I just quit and went to cheer. I'm sure. And then really push you to get better. Oh yeah. Yeah. So like try this if you get hurt. No kidding. Oh, kind of intense. I was playing gymnastics for a while, way back in the day, and then I said, morning. And then I found. Oh, what's up? That was so much fun. Wait, what happened to you? Where did you go? Where did you go? But yeah, I knew. Yeah. I'm such a fan. Like, it's so incredible to watch. That's my favorite. Oh, he did. Yeah. I'm about to get now. First year of actually I'm only beating them because I'm and they just have this huge tournament. Oh, this is really big on Tartan. Yes, where she said, yeah, both records. I saw that. If she takes it to or she or someone moves in, that's the most anyone has ever had. I know. She's incredible. I love her. Yeah, it was so fun to watch. And I love how I did like 2 nights. So I do like the best of 2 nights. I don't know. I'm starting to get like. I'm super excited. Ow, my face! Can't wait. Ow, you're like hitting me a lot. Yeah. Me too. Oh, okay. No, I didn't.
Wait, if
Is
I'm
there any like major cheerleading competitions?
I'm like,
Or
there's
like
like
following?
nationals and UCA and stuff.
Ow! I
I
couldn't
wanted
move
to
my
go,
feet.
but my dad won't let
I
me
could
go.
like
He
sit
lives in
it.
Orlando.
Well, that's a long way away. I'm
Yeah.
thinking don't see like watch it on like YouTube or like.
I don't know. But like every year, me and my brother like switch off. And
No,
when you're
I want the box. No,
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 no, no. Yes, that was cool.
I've
I've never done that before.
I'm
betting
betting
on you. How are you running down? That's still really far away. That's as far as you can get from California.
cheer, which is
Whoa.
it was so bad.
That would be pretty amazing. I bet you a video. Ow!
Yeah, probably.
I'm sure you can watch it. Is there such thing as a down week? Sometimes I feel like watching it version is better than that's my down. Because think about it.
This is my down.
You're not in nice environment. It's not too hot. It's not too cold.
Yeah.
Somebody throw something at me
Yeah.
and watch, and you just be like right up close and personal. Hey, I'm trying to practice my down.
Look at this cute
You know,
thing.
like be in the crowd. I feel like
right?
sometimes it's easier. It is more exciting to be in it,
Yeah.
Ow, my face. But like seasick.
Ow.
Well, what is it?
No.
Seasick. That's so cool. I love that. I was always really into dance when I was your age. That was
Yeah.
like my thing. Did you ever do dance?
No.
And we're gonna
I
be
did
in
ballet when I was like really
So
little.
then
I
yeah,
did,
no.
I hated
Oh,
it.
me versus you.
I
Oh
didn't
no.
like it.
I'm screwed. I suck at
So
something.
I sit in the corner of the class and she's like, keep sitting there, you're fucking on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
She just like makes all the girls be playing dress and I just be sitting in the corner like, don't tell her.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Well, when you're that age, it's not ballet. It's like
Exactly.
in oh no! I'm getting my ball. I was all
Yeah.
places with wrong kid on. I really like stop. I was first. I had a wait. Let me show you. Stop. Go. It doesn't really become dance.
Yeah.
Let me change it up. Stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard you doing really good ballet classes here. Stop.
Four.
No, three. On your back. I
Four.
tried.
Random.
Yoshi behind her. What? Wait, what? What'd you do?
Not you.
I don't like doing that. Yoshi's story! Point for a little bit, and then I was like, this is becoming my life. She's all Yoshi. I'm not into it. I didn't know what to do with my career.
Yeah.
Oh, I want the big
What did Yoshi
my life with it. Or
why?
how am I?
Yeah.
I'm just doing this.
Ow.
Because
I got
no more rocks. Yeah.
Get the food. I did gymnastics ever since I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
10.
Wow.
But I was like,
No,
it was
wow.
a huge part of my life. So they just like stop.
Oh!
That was cool. I had so many like better skills. They would not need to go. They would
Hey,
just gonna get the first one.
No,
Maybe
give me that.
it was like,
Give me that. Yeet. No.
yes,
Wait,
listen
I
to
died
Kirby.
too. What the heck?
Bye.
Kirby's waiting. Like more like. Don't for Kirby. Only Kirby. Yeah. Maybe someday we'll do that. Oh, who wants to be Mary Poppins? Woohoo! Like major like world competitions. They're like not even 18. They're like I'm waiting. Oh my gosh, they're so sad. It's really young to drink these things. No, what? I'm training that hard. It was my oh, and then what you messed up?
Yeah.
Devastated.
No cow.
No cow. My teeth is awful. So much pressure.
Yeah.
So much pressure. Yeah.
No cow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Stop. I'm joking. Stop.
Nothing is a competition.
No.
It's the worst.
100 pounds. No. Lose some weight,
Yeah,
brother.
just, like, keep going,
All my back hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Why
my
not? Oh yes, we should play.
Oh, for sure.
I don't even know how to
like.
I don't even
Like Sacramento, we go
Mario Kart double dash.
Wait, how are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not dead.
You actually cheer.
Get them inside the
Oh,
now
I
I'm.
do
Oh wait,
cheer,
you
but
killed
she
yourself.
knows that I do.
Wait. Oh no, it's one life each.
She go cheer.
Well, that's 0%. Now not.
It's like really expensive.
It is? Why?
Because they go to like Texas, they go to like they go
Oh, they actually
far.
Some music is
That's
Yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Okay, now. Uh-oh, now he's invisible.
What?
Oh, now he's not invisible anymore.
Yeah.
You are? Oh my goodness, that looks terrifying.
I have
Really?
like I got dropped so many times. Yeah, one time like in my first year of Bidwell for cheer, it was like marking the practice, and one of the older girls on the team was like trying to show off some of her stunts, like trying to show off, and she was like, she just went up
Wait,
and
listen to
then
this.
she went to do like a twist down, but she like
That was a good one.
I know, right? Walked out so they can throw you. She just went like this.
Oh, what?
Herself.
I didn't even know it.
She fell through all the spouters, face first, and like concussion on the t-shirt.
No
Yeah.
way. Were you there?
Yeah.
That must have been
It was
scary.
so scary. Like the first month or
You
two
got
practice, it was like
You got this your bird for keeping
Oh,
going.
no. Oh, no.
Over that.
it was
Hit him
so
with the-
hard, and I was like, and she just started flying again after a year.
I mean, zero Sarah for keeping going.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
It was
But you're not afraid. Ow.
no.
That hurt.
I was like, one time I was doing a flip in lesson, and
I got
people in front of me were
You got moved.
they would catch me, so I
Okay,
just
I'm gonna get feet
fell
on
on the ground. But someone caught my head luckily.
that.
But like,
Oh my god. Were you upset?
What?
No,
No,
I
no,
would
no.
have Kate. This was sketchy.
well, like they grabbed my head.
Yeah.
Shock. A bunch of people like
We didn't want
it
it,
hurt my
so.
head. A bunch of people like there were like 10 people just like trying to grab my head.
Yeah, I bet.
Like
That's
the
the
left
most
No.
important part.
No, I like
not my head.
I like this
Oh
one.
my goodness. Boring. Word.
No, I don't
It's
like your
like-
face.
I'm not scared
No.
though.
You're kind of
I'm not.
Things are falling apart
Oh,
enough.
we have like 2 more.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Us as the game
goodness.
stuff. Maybe lunch has been 15.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
green,
it's not
green.
being spotted,
I
so
love
like,
I hate this.
no.
Whoa.
Ah, I
Spotted
fell
like the
down.
first time with new stuff.
Okay.
Ow, I hit myself.
So like,
So you're catching
Oh, wait.
yeah.
Wait.
My base is
Your
in my
base.
back spot.
back.
Right. Ow, little chicken. You little falcon.
I always thought
You
I
Jimmy
could be
Fallon.
in
Falcon.
Yeah.
because I had like the leg strength
Ow,
and
I
then
hit
height, and I was like, I
You just hit my little grip.
people.
Oh crap! No.
That's crazy.
Oh! I saved myself.
We have to,
What
for
did you do?
Vikings, we practice outside.
Ow,
In
yeah.
the
I killed myself.
summer. And it's like in the hundreds outside. And we have
Oh
to, like,
no,
get
I was at
sunshine
145%.
How do you be petty
Oh
with
wait,
the sun?
Kirby is just Springfield. He was on his.
Because otherwise, like if you're in the front line, you're gonna go to the back line.
It's already. No, yes.
And then you're
What?
gonna regret
Yes.
it.
I do not like my life.
Doing your best.
I do
I'm like, wow.
like my
Now
life.
I'm back.
Now I'm in the back.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I could do that.
It's hard.
Whoa, look at that goodness. Wow.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Doing good.
This is Daniel. Are you past there?
That's right.
Oh,
Kayla.
oh,
Nice to meet you.
oh, oh, chicken.
It's the day.
How you doing?
I'm all right.
Hello, my face.
Incredibly
This is my cat.
Everybody, everyone said just like,
No.
that's right.
So
So you were camping.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah, we were just.
No.
But the answer was also.
Wait, how did you not die?
So we tried to celebrate our 3-year-old birthday,
No.
taking her
Alright,
to
now you.
pictures in the
Yeah, my
library,
cat
and then we stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning, packed up
has
the
an
car,
apple in my
Oh
hand.
so we could just drive to church this morning and leave from here. But
Going to a banjo.
not everything was ready.
Bam!
So I couldn't
I
pack
like
it.
banjo.
So I had to pack some of these stuff and
Oh!
No, jeez. Just no.
That house was dangerous.
Oh,
Oh, you almost missed the ledge. Oh,
you
you
were
were
hitting
hitting
it.
it.
Ah!
I'm very excited about it.
We finally get to go on our little getaway to the beach. Jane asks every
No,
day.
Umpty, no,
No, look at the calendar again. See how many days we have left to cross off?
You got
That's
moved.
crazy.
And then we'll say like, yesterday we said it's tomorrow. We're going
You got
tomorrow.
moved.
Today?
This is
No.
really hard.
No.
I don't know if you could understand this really
Yeah.
Wait, no, no, no.
She doesn't take naps anymore, so that actually works now.
That works.
Oh, no.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I want the gold one.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
nice.
we should get started.
Okay. I'm gonna go to
All right, boys, it's time to get started. Let's go grab some chairs. Oh, someone already got chairs for us.
I got a
Lexi.
little bit out.
Lexi.
Oh, I didn't put the songs in yet. I got distracted.
Okay, so we have a few seconds. I'll write a question on the board.
Okay.
If anyone wants to come answer your question, they can.
Master. Do you want to do 3, Daniel, or just 2? Okay.
Actually,
And this crown. I think this is the most people I've ever seen in first service.
That's because you don't come to any other service. Oh, yeah. Michael.
Yeah.
Were you in my car on the way home from camp?
Yeah.
Did you leave your Elevate sunglasses?
No. They might be Weston's.
Was Weston on the car on the way home from camp?
Yeah, he was. What?
I thought it was Caleb.
Oh yeah, it was Caleb.
See, I already asked Caleb that.
Oh.
He said you were the other guy in our car because I couldn't remember.
I don't wear glasses.
It's like sunglasses.
Yeah, I don't wear sunglasses.
You didn't buy Elevate sunglasses.
Nope.
You were the one who leave sunglasses in my car. You didn't go in my car. Makes no sense.
You?
They don't fit my head. They're huge size sunglasses. I have a giant head.
I have a medium head.
Well sized for your body, I would say.
And he has a medium head. Tiny head. I have a meteor head. I have
A meteor?
explosive head. Oh, it's kind of hungry.
Alright. Well, guess who gets-
It's face level. Facebook. So.
Are you guys practicing your career society?
Yeah.
So that is very good. Very good.
Too insulted.
No. No, if they leave your band to do an impression of me, I did my job.
That's true, actually.
Learning is their choice, but if they actually like took in what I said, so job done.
It's very true.
Alright, I'm gonna turn down the lights so we can just kind of focus on that and not people around us. Always do your best and not actually do your best.
Oh, that's gonna be
Like,
like 85% possible. 15. It's possible.
it can be done.
All right. Do we have sound in it?
Probably not.
Check. Oh, there it is. Hello. Cool. All right. I'm going to open us in prayer and we'll get started. Lord, thank you so much for this beautiful morning, God. Thank you for each person you brought here this service. We're just so grateful we can come here and just know each other and just fellowship with one another and worship your name. And not about you. Most importantly, God, that we just draw closer to you. We give you this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Sing worthy. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. God, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. And I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. And I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. could just sit, I could just sit and wait for all your goodness. Hope to feel your presence. I could just stay, I could just stay right where I am. Hope to feel it, hope to feel something again. I could hold on, I could hold on to who I am. Never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave from. Never let these walls down, but you have caught me higher. You have caught me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Yes, you have caught me higher. You have caught me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Where you lead me, Lord. You lead me, Lord. And I could just say, I could just sit and wait for all your goodness. Hope to feel your presence. And I could just stay, I could just stay right where I am. Hope to feel you, hope to feel something again. And I could hold on, I could hold on to who I am. Never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave from. Never let these walls down, but you have caught me higher. You have caught me deeper, and I'll go where you lead me, Lord. Yes, you have caught me higher. You have caught me deeper, and I'll go where you lead me, Lord. Where you lead me, Lord. And I will be yours. I will be yours for all my life. And I will be yours. I will be yours for all my life. And I will be yours. I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy light the path before me. And I will be yours. I will be yours for all my life, so let your mercy light the path before me. 'Cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Yes, you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Where you lead me, Lord. Where you lead me, Lord. Okay, stand with me for the last song, please. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Holy, overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was a foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. And when I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. In all the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, a mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, a lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, a lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Lord, you are so good to us. Just give you this time again. Just ask, as always, you continue to speak through Daniel. And bless our time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Lexi.
Amen.
Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Go and stick your phones in the phone.
No,
buckets.
I literally always win for some reason. I always never
When you show me
um I would always win because my iPod, it has rubber on the around the case and it would stick out, and so it would have rubber on the sides of it, and then I would put it down facing downwards, So when like easily slide out.
All right. If you don't have a Bible, you can grab one off the shelf. We're going to be doing something interesting today and looking at two translations at once.
Wait, what?
Two translations at once?
What do you mean?
That's me.
It's me trademarking the
Where's the mail?
All right. Lexi, someone let me see. Could you turn off light switch number 2?
Thanks, Sam.
Okay.
Genesis 4.
Today we're in Genesis chapter 4.
There's Genesis. There's 4 Genesis
Chapter.
Genocide. No, it's chapter 4. Chapter 4. I went back and forth between putting the word chapter up there and not putting the word chapter up there, and I landed on not putting the word chapter. It's chapter.
Genesis. Genesis.
Genesis the 4th.
It's like Genesis.
Alrighty. One more time. What was your name? I gotta try and learn this.
Hey, it reminds me of another name I know.
Alright, my name's Daniel. That's Lexi. My wife Emily over there. Our 3-year-old just disappeared in the kitchen. That's Jane.
Oh my god.
You guys want to introduce yourselves? No?
No?
Just stare blankly at Daniel. That's a much better option.
You know your name.
What?
You can say your name.
Introduce yourself to Kayla. Kayla's new.
This is Kayla.
Say hi, Kayla.
Oh.
And then tell her who you are.
I am Hunter.
Fine.
So, Samuel, Mike, Hunter.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. I wasn't looking. I had my eyes shut. It was easier. All right. We are in Genesis chapter 4. So, who was here last week?
What?
Lexi was here last week? Were any of you guys here last week?
I was here.
Genesis 3, garden,
No.
serpent,
Yeah.
fall of mankind, first
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah, I
I
was
was
here.
here on Monday though. I mean Wednesday.
I was like, Monday. What was
Monday?
going on
Why were you
Monday?
here Monday?
I just
Monday's
played
my
video
day
games
off. I
all
was
day.
home.
I just played video games all day.
Oh, okay. So you weren't here.
No, I was here. I was
Playing video games all day?
On Monday.
You gotta come down on Monday. Sounds like a relaxing time.
Oh, we should start streaming that. That would be cool.
But that's not real. We were joking about it existing.
No, but still. We should start
But
doing.
still.
We
But
should,
still.
We should
Dark
start
room, nothing happening. Let's stream that.
We should start doing Twitch.
Take over the
We
internet.
should
All right,
start
guys.
doing
So
Twitch streams
last
on
week,
Mondays.
for all those who weren't here, we went through Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3 is when Satan takes over the serpent, goes and tempts Eve. Eve falls. She makes the mistake of eating the fruit that God said not to eat, the one that would give her knowledge of good and evil. It would give her the ability to know right from wrong, rather than just trusting God when he told her what was right. Then Adam does the same, but he's not deceived. He actually does it knowingly. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's disobeying God. And through them, sin is now a reality. The problem of people who live are going to do wrong. You live, you're going to do wrong. Give it time, you'll always do wrong. Now, the first people actually made it a while before they got to the really, really big sins. The really bad ones. The ones we all think of like, oh, I would never. Took them a while to get to those. But eventually, they got to them. So we're going to look at chapter 4 today in Genesis. First off, just because Kayla doesn't know, we take turns reading. And since we have 2 translations today, you can choose. You can choose the New Living Translation in your hands, or you can choose this handy translation up on the screen. If you do choose, I just ask that you actually glance at both to decide, rather than just like arbitrarily. CEV. It's even younger. It's like a 6th grade reading level.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, very, very easy reading.
I just
Okay.
got noticed.
So there were some seriously tricky passages in here that I do not side with NLT on, and
Really?
to teach what I was going to teach, I have to stop and explain in Hebrew every time. So we're just going to go with the one that I feel like is a little closer to what the Hebrew word was trying to do. Okay. So CEV for this one, there is one verse in message, but that's a cross-reference. So we'll get there when we get there. Okay. Michael, you want to start us off?
Sure. Adam and Eve had a son. Then he said, I will, jeez, I cannot read. I will name him King because I got him with the help of the Lord. Later, she had another son named Cain.
Okay, now does anybody know why she named him Cain?
Because he can't walk.
She got him
Because
from the help of the Lord.
I got him with the help of the Lord.
Yes,
Now,
exactly.
think about this, okay? Think of Eve's position. Eve, first woman ever.
Wait, Cain.
Yeah, that's not it.
Yeah.
They don't speak English. This is so many thousands of years ago. They didn't even speak Hebrew. This book was written by Moses in Hebrew, but that was only a few thousand years ago. The actual thing we're reading about when it occurred was even more thousands of years before Moses. So no, they didn't even speak Hebrew at the time. But the name's translation carried through. Yeah, we don't know the language. It was too long ago. Proto Hebrew.
Moto.
So Cain in the Hebrew, because his name is being translated for us into Hebrew, whatever it was eons before, I don't know. It's now Cain in Hebrew. So in the Hebrew, Cain is this word that we use, this one right here. God. That's their word. Okay, and you can use got in two major senses in English. It's kind of the same for them. You can use got like I just got that. I just got it. Or when someone asks you, did you get the milk? Oh yeah, I got the milk. Well, when someone asks you, did you get the milk? And you say, I got the milk, they're assuming you don't mean, I did get it and then drank all of it and threw it away. They're assuming you mean, I got it, I still have it, right? If someone asks, did you get the milk? And the real truth is you already drank the whole jug and threw it in the trash, like, then saying, yes, I got it doesn't work. So got doesn't just mean you received it. It means, in Hebrew at least, this instance of got means I still have it. I have what I've received. So Eve names him this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If you remember, she's the first woman. No one's ever given birth to a child, ever. And no one's ever been created except for her and Adam. That's it. They're the whole sum of humanity. So who's made every human so far? Is your brain even on? Is it just sarcasm joke mode? That's the only one you turned on this morning? Wake up, Archer! So who made every human so far? At this point, God did. So when Eve suddenly makes a human, she's like, I just did something only God can do. That's pretty cool. She's the first person who's not God to make life. That's really cool. So she says, with the help of the Lord. She doesn't even know how it works. Medical science has not even happened yet. She doesn't know what happened. She just knows, like, I got pregnant, my belly grew out, boom, I had a kid. That's amazing. Okay, next kid, named Abel. This one trips me out to no end. Do you know what his name means? Okay. Now, Lexi might get this one. Some of you guys might get this one. It's a pretty out there thing. We talk about it here at church once in a blue moon. Okay, has anyone ever heard the word hovel?
No.
Shovel?
Like a camel, but like deformed.
Oh God. Okay, so there's this book in the Bible, probably one of the hardest ones to read. It's pretty up there. It's called Ecclesiastes. Anyone ever heard of Ecclesiastes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Ecclesiastes is the thing written by Solomon towards the end of his life, and the book is 12 chapters long. It's not that long, but every chapter is kind of the same thing. He lists, like, I tried this, and it didn't work. It wasn't that good. It kind of bummed me out. And I tried this, and that didn't make life worth it. And I tried this, and yeah, life still sucked. And then I tried this, and like 12 chapters, I kid you not, of just him saying the things that people try to make themselves happy in life. And him saying, richest guy who ever lived, smartest guy who ever lived, in charge of an entire country, I did that too. And yep, still sucked. Like 12 chapters of bum you out, and then 2 verses at the very, 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 very end of the book where he says the real, what living should actually be like. What is the real life? What's the life that's worth it? 2 verses. So it's a crazy book.
So we went through like an entire 12, 11 and a half chapters just to get to 2 verses.
Yes, but the point is, if anyone ever reads the book, they won't ever have an excuse to go, oh, well, he didn't try that. I'll go try that. That'll probably make me happy. He made sure the book contains everything you could possibly dream of as a what should make people happy. And he says, nope, that doesn't bring real happiness. It doesn't bring real joy. It brings fleeting happiness. But he has a word for that. The happiness that you think is real, but it really runs away the second you find it. The thing that is hollow, even though it looks pretty on the outside, there's nothing on the inside. The word is havel. That's the Hebrew word. And he says that word in every single chapter of the book. Everything is just havel, havel, havel. The proper translation in English would be close to vain or vanity, where someone is looking in the mirror and all they do is just stare in the mirror. I look good. Yeah. Okay, does that improve anyone, anything at all, ever? Or does it just feel good right there in that moment, and then you walk away from the mirror and it's gone? That's havel. Okay? There's like a certain amount of like awesome right there on the just on the edge of it, and then you look inside or you look past that and it's gone. It's like a bubble. You blow it out of the little bubble wand and it's like gone. That's havel. That's what she named her son. That's what Abel means. If you go back into the Hebrew, it's not Abel, it's havel. She named her son empty, vain thing. It's possible. In all of these stories, it is possible, but it's also possible they're prophetic. Now, there's a flip side to this in the Hebrew. When you look at this verse, it follows a pattern that's not yet set. Because the first two kids that have ever been born, right? Okay, so there's a pattern in the Bible, but you won't notice it if you read it in order, because there's no pattern yet. It's the only time it's ever occurred that kids were born. Later, as you keep reading in the Bible, you start to see every time kids are born, there's this pattern that occurs. Whenever you mention the mother, if you mention the mother, because they don't always mention the mother, if you mention the mother, you mention the fact that she became pregnant, the fact that she conceived, once for every time that she gives birth. She conceived and bore a son is the older translation. She became pregnant and had a child is the modern translation. And they do it every single time if the mother is mentioned. If the mother's not mentioned, they're just like, oh yeah, dad had a kid, dad had a kid, dad had a kid. All the way down. Father, son, father, son, father, son, father, son. They don't name the mothers a lot of the time. But when they name the mothers, they mention the pregnancy and the birth. Notice something. Adam and Eve had a son. This is the verse in the original that would say she got pregnant. And then it says, I'll name the first son Cain, and I'll name the second son Abel. No second pregnancy. Now, the only other times that happens in the Bible, and every other time that happens in the Bible, they're twins. They're twins. Why else would you mention one pregnancy and two births? So the theory goes, even though it doesn't use the word twin, because they didn't actually have that word yet, because these were the only kids ever born. Correct. As in, and literally the Hebrew is next. Not later, next. She had another son. But no extra pregnancy. So, again, just speculation based on the Hebrew, but as far as we know, Cain means I got something. Abel means fleeting, it doesn't last. It goes away.
Yeah.
And they're twins.
This is in college.
Okay, now we spent enough time on the first two verses. Hunter, would you read us the next set? It's not that much. It's just like
a lot. It's not actually a lot. You got this. Wake up.
Abel became a sheep farmer, but Cain farmed the land. One day, Cain gave part of his harvest to the Lord, and Abel also gave an offering to the Lord. He killed the firstborn lamb from one of his sheep and gave the Lord the best parts of it. The Lord was pleased with Abel and his offerings, but not with Cain and his offerings. This made Cain so angry that he could not hide his anger.
All right, you guys ever heard this story before? Does it ring any bells? Yes, maybe? No?
Yes.
Just kind of, maybe? Okay, has anyone ever wondered, if you've heard this before, why is it God took the sheep offering and was like, cool, and then God looks at the grain offering and is like, why? Why would that be? The sheep is alive. Is that important? Follow-up question, are plants alive? I'll give you an even twist to your thought. Okay, later in the Bible, when God starts his own country and he lays out, here's the kinds of sacrifices I will accept, and he gives all the specific types. Okay, one of them is a grain offering. One of the things he asks for is specifically grain. He also asks for, lamb and cow and all those other things too. But but literally grain is actually on his list. Isn't that strange? I hope you're joking. No, God does not just think, oh, I should try and upset him. That'd be great. No. Any other theories or thoughts? You can make a wild guess here. Wild guesses are totally acceptable because it doesn't explain the why. All it says is the Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering, but not with Cain and his offering. That's all it says. It doesn't say why.
Because Cain gave
Why? Why is that not true? Because what? No, you already said that. No. All right, so funny enough, guys, this is kind of a cliffhanger moment. People guessed this for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and then eventually, in the New Testament, when it finally got written, because remember, this is one of the oldest books in existence. Genesis has been around since around 1444 BC. This is a seriously old book. But then in the New Testament, somewhere around like the Hebrews would be 60s AD. So, some 1,500 years later, we finally get the reveal. Exactly why. So, you get to read the cross-reference today. It's going to be in Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 4.
By an act of faith, Abel brought a better sacrifice to God than Cain. It was what he believed, not what he brought. Not what he brought him. That's what God knows and proved his righteous. After all he said things that he promised kept up.
Okay, so check this out. We're not actually certain of the author of Hebrews, but we think it's Paul. They were trying to explain the what happened. And the reason they bring it up is because they were trying to explain that actions are important, but not as important as faith. Faith becomes more important when you put it in the right thing or the wrong thing. You put it in the right thing, it changes your actions. You put it in the wrong thing, it also changes your actions. But when you put it in the right thing, it draws your actions towards the right. It draws them towards God. Your actions start to be more and more like what God would want you to do, just by putting faith in Him. And likewise, you stick your faith into anything else, and your actions follow. They become like the thing you put your faith in. And anything less than God is less than perfect. So your actions keep on straying further and further away from God if your faith is not in Him, in Him alone. So what does it say about Abel and Cain? Not that they brought better or worse sacrifices. Isn't that interesting? Not the sacrifice was better, but that the faith existed there. It was in Abel, and the faith was not in Cain. It was what Abel believed. So go back to the verse. This is what Hunter already read. So check this out. It says, he killed the firstborn lamb. Firstborn lamb. Okay, back to what Cain did. Cain gave part of his harvest.
Oh, just like that woman in the rich guy thing.
No, you might be going somewhere good. Go on.
It's like the homeless woman gave her all of her offerings and goes by and gave just a little bit of all his offerings.
Yes.
So done.
You can see the heart through the action, but the action isn't what made the difference. It was the heart behind it. When the woman gave what she gave, this is a story coming from the New Testament if you guys don't know it. Jesus is witnessing this happening for real in front of him. He witnesses a poor woman come and drop 2 tiny little coins into the offering. Yeah, Lexi.
You think if Cain did give his entire crop, like everything?
It would still depend on the heart. It would still depend on the heart. So when the woman gave the tiny amount she gave 2 little tiny coins, she gave it with a tremendous heart because that was the only 2 coins she had left. So she made the choice that day, do I give everything I have to God or do I give some? God didn't say, give me everything you have, I want all of it. I want you to be poor, I want you to be broke. He didn't say that. But what God accepted, what God was looking on, what Jesus saw right there in that moment that he said was amazing was the heart of the woman. The woman said, God, I want you to have this more than I want me to have this. I want you to have this. Ding, ding, 2 little coins. Then there's like a rich guy that comes up right after her. He comes up with a money bag and sits there and pours it slow. Sitting there, just coins for days. Just making it rain in the money pot. Letting the noise linger as long as possible. So everyone looks from wherever they are, just looking, whoa, who's putting in all that money? Whoa! Now he put in way more than the poor one. But the heart was obvious by the way he gave. Jesus could see in his heart was he wanted attention from people. The money did not go in the pot because he wanted to give something to God. Does that make sense? who gave the better offering? Well, physically, the rich guy gave more coins than the poor woman, but heart-wise, the poor woman was doing it for God, and the rich man was doing it for attention. So there's a huge difference here in faith. There's a huge difference here in heart, and we see the same thing here. Their actions are reflections of their heart. What does Cain do? He just takes a part, no special part, no special amount of his harvest. And God didn't say, give me a special part, I just want this, don't give me anything else. But his heart was not there. That's what's revealed in Hebrews. And so we see in his actions, it's not that special either. It's not that special either. He just gives some of what he already has lying around. He already harvested it. Okay, I'll give some to God. Now, when we get into the grain offering later, there's a specific rule on the grain offering. The rule is it has to be your first harvest and the first part of the first harvest. So before you got to eat any of your harvest, you went and you gave some to God. And that's what made the grain special. Because one piece of grain kind of looks like the next piece of grain. There's not usually like some big standout difference. Oh, this is the best grain right here. You can tell. See how the little lines in this? That's the best one. No. So what you did to make it special was you just took the very first harvest, and before you got to eat anything else in your field, before you baked one loaf of bread from it, you take that first part and go give that to God as an offering. Once you sacrifice and you come back, then you can go harvest everything else. So that's what made it special. Cain does not do anything special. He just gives some of his harvest. What did Abel do? What was special about Abel's? Firstborn lamb. So when lambs are being born, if you're going to eat one, you've been waiting the whole time that mama sheep's been pregnant. You've been waiting the whole time, waiting the whole time, waiting the whole time, waiting the whole time. Finally, the lamb's born. Well, then you would want to like fatten it up, and you'd want to raise it, and you want to make it good to eat. Then you would eat it. Instead, you don't get to do any of that. You go give it to God. You don't get to do any of the things that the lamb was actually useful for. And it was the first one. So like you're still waiting on all the other ones. You don't have any other ones yet. So this is an important moment. In the year, you have a lamb being born. It's the first one. You're going to go give it to God. That makes it special. So again, Abel's heart, he had faith. It's reflected in his actions. Cain's heart, not very much faith. Reflected in his actions. Okay. Sam, you're up next.
It's my turn.
Oh, did Sam? Oh, he read the cross-reference. That's right. I already rewound the 100 because we went back on the verse.
The Lord said to Cain, "What's wrong with you? Why do you have such an angry look on your face? If you had done the right thing, you would be smiling. But you did the wrong thing, and now sin is waiting to attack you like a lion. Sin wants to destroy you, but don't let it."
We see the same thing here, and we'll see it again in this chapter that we saw last chapter. It's the same thing we saw last chapter. God sees people going astray. He approaches them and he gives them caution. He says exactly what could go wrong and that they should not do it. He did this in the garden when he set up the rules. He did it after they broke the rules. He went and allowed them opportunities, multiple, to confess their sin, to make it right. And here he's doing it with Cain. He says, okay, you messed up once, but you messed up with me. My feelings don't get hurt easily. You can always make this right. You know what you should have done. You know your heart should be towards me and not away from me. You can still fix it, but I'm warning you, sin sees that you're moving in its direction and it wants to take hold of you. It sees you're already going towards doing the wrong thing, and it wants to capture you and force you to do something way worse. You mess up one sacrifice, go sacrifice again. Make it right. Do something for God. You were wrong towards God, go do something right towards God. You weren't listening to him, you weren't talking to him, go talk to him. Well, funny enough, that's not what happens. Cain doesn't answer. So he doesn't take the first step that's always the right step. Talk to God. Pray. Just talk to him. He doesn't do that though. His face shows how upset he is. And then this happens. Caleb?
Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go for a walk." And then when they were out of the field, Cain jumped in.
Wow. That escalated quickly. He's upset at Abel. As far as we know, his twin brother. They've grown up together. Based on facts we get way later, like combining the end of this chapter and next chapter, we know they're actually in their hundreds. So at this point in time, people lived into like their 900s, so their lifespans were way, way lengthened. But they're actually around like 120 at this point. They've had a full relationship with each other. They've been brothers for a long time. They've been brothers for like as long as we live. Does that make sense? Like we usually, the max anyone could hope to ever get to is like 120. They've been alive that long. They've lived out that whole life together. And Cain is the older brother. I mean, it's like a technicality because they're twins, but they really took that to mean something back then. He's the eldest. He's probably got younger brothers, younger sisters by now. Adam Eve probably had other kids. So there's like this growing family, but there's always the two oldest. Cain and Abel were always the two oldest. They were probably, I would imagine, the most in charge out of everyone there. And now, in front of God and who knows how many others, Abel has shown up Cain. Abel was shown to be better in God's eyes than Cain was. That just tore Cain apart. He couldn't handle it. And God says you need to do the right thing. What was the right thing in the situation? Get himself right with God. Did Abel do anything wrong? Was Abel trying to mess with Cain? No, we saw his heart in Hebrews. It was revealed for us. The only reason he gave a better sacrifice was because he had faith. He wanted to please God. That was his desire. Not show up Cain. But Cain doesn't see it that way. Cain takes out his frustration on Abel. Abel's now dead. And then we see God is the one who responds, like in the last chapter. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is Abel?" "How should I know?" he answered. "Am I supposed to look after my brother?" Hunter's an older brother. He's like, yeah. Pretty sure. Well, okay, granted, brothers should look out for brothers. Now, remember, they're adults, right? 120-ish. So if at, the adult age, let's pick our young adult age. Let's say like 25 to 28, okay? Somewhere in there. 25 to 28. Your mom says, "Hey, have you seen your brother lately?" You're like, "I don't even live in the same house as him." No. It'd be kind of weird if she started calling you asking for where he was, except, I don't know, maybe you have a relationship and maybe you like talk to your brother. That doesn't seem that strange. Like if your mom said, "How could you let him get in a car crash?" Like, "He lives in Vermont. I had nothing to do with it." That'd be strange. But if your mom said, "Hey, have you talked to your brother lately?" That wouldn't be weird, right? That wouldn't be strange. What did God ask? Where is Abel? He didn't say, "Hey, have you been looking after Abel? Is Abel okay? Are you taking care of him?" He didn't say that. God just said, "Hey, where's Abel?" That's a perfectly normal question. And then Cain takes it completely out of, normality, because why? If your mom ever asked you where your brother was and you started freaking out, your mom would know something was wrong, right? That makes, yeah, okay. So God gave him the opportunity. You can apologize right now. You can confess right now. You can do all these things. I'm not going to push you in any direction. I'm just going to ask you, where is Abel? Just a simple, totally vague, non-pushy question. He flips out. And then God says this. He takes that flip out as the response. No confession, no repentance. So God does this.
Then the Lord said, "Why have you done this terrible thing? You killed your own brother, and his blood flowed onto the ground. Now his blood is crying out for me to punish you. And so I'll put you under a curse because you killed Abel and his blood ran out on the ground. You will never be able to farm the land again. If you try to farm the land, it won't produce anything for you. From now on, you will be without a home, and you will spend the rest of your life wandering in this place."
Ooh.
Oh, I know who that sounds like.
Yeah.
Me. No.
Who? Who does it sound like?
Listen. Oh, I know who that sounds
You got us on a cliff here. Okay, so God responds with the right answer. He already knows what Cain did. He didn't ask where is Abel because God's like a total airhead. Just like, "Hey, have you seen Abel?" God knew exactly what was going on. He knew Abel was dead. So he asks him where he is, but then when Cain doesn't confess to his sin, God just gives him the punishment. Boom. Immediately. And the punishment really works. It really makes sense. He says, you have wronged the ground. You wronged the soil by killing your brother and letting the blood spill out on the ground. You've wronged the ground, so I will curse the ground to you. You try and farm, you'll get nothing. That's your curse. Now, in today's day and age, there are like 500,000 different jobs that exist, and you get a job doing anything. But imagine if you were the son, the oldest son of the first couple on the planet. Do you think perhaps dad might have been a farmer? Think about this for a second. If dad's not a farmer, where does the food come from?
China, where everything else is from.
There's no China yet. There's no people yet. Adam and Eve are the first two. If Adam doesn't farm, there's no food.
It just appears in China.
No.
It just appears in China.
No.
It came down from the
So,
sky.
in all likelihood, Cain and Abel grew up doing sheep raising and farming because that's what dad did. In all likelihood, they grew up doing that because that's what dad did. So, Cain, remember, it's what he did. This isn't like an optional, oh, maybe I'll farm, maybe I won't. Like, literally, the first part of the story tells us he's a farmer. This is the first part of the story. So God's curse is, you can't farm.
Take the
Dang it! That's kind of a big deal because that means now he has to learn how to do something completely new. Completely different. He has to change jobs out of the blue.
How does he get food?
Well, like I said, he's got brothers and sisters. Someone else, I would hope, knows how to farm by now. Dad obviously knows how to farm. So some other kid may have picked it up by now. Remember, they've been alive 120 years. There could have been generations going on. There could have been second babies, out of the grandkids and great-grandkids by now. 120 years is a long time. So kids all over the place, other farmers perhaps, but he says, nope, you can't farm. And then on top of that, he says, and you won't ever get to stay in one place. You don't get to have a home. Dang. Now, I got a question though. You just killed your brother. So imagine that for a second, if you have a brother. Oh no, that was not the response I was expecting. Okay, so imagine your brother's lying there dead. God catches you first, not your parents, for some reason. And God just starts talking to you, and he punishes you, and he says, you can't work the job you want to work. The thing that you've always dreamed of doing, the thing that you're good at, you can't do it. It's against the rules now. I will keep you from doing it. And you're no longer allowed to stay in one place. You don't get to have a home. You're a wanderer. You're practically homeless. What is your response when mom and dad come home? Are you going to complain about the punishment that God gave you? Is that the response? Think. Does anyone know which one it is?
Who does that? It's probably yours.
It's not that
This one's not on silent, so I'll put it on silent. Back. Do you want it not on silent?
I want someone to call.
No. All right, so my point in all of this is that I would be worried about, like, the fact that I killed my brother. That's what I would be thinking about. That's not what Kane's thinking about. Check this out. This is Hunter.
Okay. This punishment is too hard, Kim said.
You mean the 4-year-old said? The 4-year-old says.
Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead, try it again.
I'm confused too.
Kane is acting like a 4-year-old.
Oh, okay.
You get punished and you did something wrong, you should feel bad about what you did wrong.
Maybe it sounds like she did something.
Hunter, it says Kane. You read it properly. What I meant was, look at that response. God punishes him because he's a murderer.
It's too hard.
And his response is, this punishment's too hard. Sorry, continue.
You're making me lose my home, and it's far from you. I will have to wander about without a home. I wish anyone could kill me.
He's worried about dying. He just murdered someone.
He's
He's worried about dying. What?
Priorities.
Priorities, guys. This explains his heart so much better. This explains his heart so well. And yet, earlier when it says, like, he gave a grain offering and God didn't accept him or his offering, we're like, why? Why not? Boom! That's why. God punished him for being a murderer. He's like, but it's hard.
I don't want to die.
I don't want to be punished. Like,
Not,
dude, you should have thought of that.
Sorry for
You
killing
should
my
have thought of that before you killed a guy. Oh, it's so disappointing to see this. This is when you punish a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, and they're like, I'm sorry, you know you're doing something good. You know you're doing something right. That kid is learning. That kid gets it. The punishment is there because they were wrong. When a 5-year-old says, I don't want to be punished, it's like, you're not doing it right. Something's missing. They're not sorry. They're not getting it. Does that make sense? So Cain, not getting it. He's not sorry. He's only disliking his situation. He doesn't care about what he just did. He doesn't care about the consequences except how they affect him. Yeah. So think about that. That's the only part that wasn't a punishment. He says just anyone could kill me. That wasn't a punishment from God, right? That's just a natural consequence. Your family is the only living humans on the planet. You killed one of them. He is as old as you. I mean, like minutes, hours difference, right? So literally everyone you know, he knows. Everyone you know, he knows. You killed someone that is a friend and family member to everyone you know. Yeah, someone might take revenge on you. Any one person who loved Abel could just say, all right, that's it. I'm gonna hunt down, I'm gonna kill Cain. Any one of them could have said that. And that's what he's worried about. Not the fact that he killed his brother.
I wonder who loves Cain.
Well, he has a wife. So you could start the list there. He's got kids on the way. I don't know if they're already born or born after this, but like the timeline's a little fuzzy. But yeah, he has kids. So all right, who's next? Is it Sam? Go. Remember, he just complained about anyone could kill him.
No, the Lord answered. Anyone who kills you will be punished 7 times worse than I punished him. So the Lord put a mark on Cain's forehead and left him. But Cain had to go far from the Lord, and only the land of was east of him.
Okay. So he puts a mark on Cain from God, so that everyone knows God said don't kill him. Do you have a question? Or are you just touching your hair? Okay. You're touching it like this, so I was curious. All right. So God prevents him from being killed. Now this is interesting, because later in the Bible, God says the right punishment for murder is death. He says, like, once you have a government and there is someone impartial who can actually judge the case and deem them guilty, you should kill the murderer. That is the correct punishment. It fits the crime. They killed, now they're killed. However, at this point, there is no government and everyone is family. And so I don't think God is saying don't kill Cain because it's wrong to kill a murderer. Later, God says it's right to kill a murderer. So, I think the reason he says don't kill him is because I don't think anyone on the planet could actually say, I'm impartial. I am separate from this. I can kill him as just the hand of God's justice. I don't think anyone could say that. They're all related to Cain. They're all related to Abel. They're all family. So anyone who picks up the sword and says, all right, Cain, you're a murderer. It's your turn to die now, would still have some amount of vengeance. They still have some idea of revenge in their head, even as they did it. Sometimes revenge is very strange, and it doesn't even have to be yours. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that kind of revenge, where you want to protect another person, or you want to avenge another person, and that person was wronged, and so you want to attack their attacker. God even says in that instance, you should not be the one who picks up the sword. The person who does it should be in government, and it's their office, and it's their job, and they should hate it. And that person is the only person who was right to kill the murderer. Because they have no heart of vengeance. They have no heart of, I'm going to get him. It was purely just, well, God said I have to do this. You're not supposed to enjoy it. You're not supposed to want it. Wanting it was part of making it wrong. So God doesn't let anyone kill Cain, even though he's a murderer, and God knows it. And, everyone's going to figure it out pretty soon. Okay, then it's Lexi's turn.
Later, Cain and his wife had a son named Enoch. At that time, Cain was growing tired, and he named it Enoch after his son. And Enoch had a son named Irad.
Yeah, sure.
Who had a son named, help me out,
Mehujael.
Michael. Who had a son named Methuselah. Nope.
It's almost Methusael.
I just guessed that one. I was like, oh, I can't think of it. Who had a son named Lamech.
There's actually, if you look through the later family tree of Adam and Cain's family tree, there's a lot of almosts and even
Yeah.
some perfect matches of names
Oh, really?
where they name their kids the same stuff.
Oh, wow.
So they're pretty early on. There wasn't that much inventiveness for names. They're just
Right.
picking out words they already use.
Right.
So yeah, he names his son, he names his city Enoch. And then that tells us what did Cain start doing since he couldn't farm? He would make houses. Now, if you think about this makes sense. You're doing something that other people want, but they may or may not know how to do. And because Cain is one of the oldest guys on the planet, he's one of the smartest guys on the planet. So he's building buildings for other people to go and live in. And then what did God say his punishment was? You would never have a home, you'll always wander. So he's literally a traveling town builder. And then whole families, as they part from Adam's, one big starter family, they go off looking for places. Cain can now offer them not just one house for like one small piece of the family. Here's a pre-built like condo complex of houses for you all to live in. But he wouldn't do it for free. They would have to pay him. So now he can make places for other people to live in, even though he's not going to get to. And then they can pay him for that.
So it's like renting a house?
He's like a developer. That's what we call it now. You go in, you buy a piece of land, and you just put up all the buildings, and then you say who wants them. You just sell off all the stuff you built. So yeah, Cain became a developer. Weird, right? All right, and then Kayla.
Lamech married Ada, then Zillah. Lamech and Ada had two sons, Jabal and Jubal. Their son Jabal was the first to live in tents and raise sheep and goats. Jubal was the first to play harps and flutes.
Now, there's a lot of people in the Old Testament in these early chapters where they tell you what they did, because these are some of the first people on the planet. They are essentially the inventors of the thing they did, and that's why they bring it up. Like, it's not important that this is the guy who invented tents. It's just kind of interesting. Like, before that, no one used tents. This guy figured out sticks and fabric and ropes. Let's make a tent, and I can live out in the pasture with my sheep. That's kind of cool. Then I can move my sheep and I can go with them, and I can sleep in my tent. I don't have to keep on bringing them back to my house where the grass has all been eaten already. I can keep going around with my sheep. Likewise, this guy was a musician, and likely the first musician. We don't read about any other instruments before these two. And these are the oldest instrument designs. Plucking a cord and blowing through some kind of hollow tube with holes in it. Those are the first kinds of instruments we see in archaeology. It makes sense that they're invented by someone way, way back there.
Which is a cool name. It's a sweet first job.
A cooler name?
Wish Jubal is a better name.
I just love that they had two kids and they named them Jabal Jubal. It sounds like some sort of nonsense word song. Jubal Jabal. I don't know. I don't know. It sounds musical to me. All right. Lamech and Zillah had a son named Tubal-Cain.
Tubal-Cain?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I think I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it means like sequel to Cain. Like,
Tubal-Cain?
I don't know. Who made tools out of bronze and iron. This is the first blacksmith. This family is ripe with inventors. Okay, you guys have the one who invented the tent and the ability to sleep wherever you feel like. You guys have the first musician who invented instruments, and then you got the first blacksmith. He's making stuff out of metal. That's really cool. Think about all the incredible, ridiculous discoveries in science that you'd have to make something out of metal, like finding ore in the dirt and knowing what the heck it is. Because it's just mixed in with the dirt. You don't see it. You're like, oh, look, a chunk of ore. It's just dirt and ore mixed together. You cook the dirt, and out comes the ore. Like, that's wild that he even got that far. And then he thought, let's try making stuff out of this. And he figured it out. Bronze and iron. That's insane. They also had a daughter whose name was Nema. And then Michael.
One day, Lamech said to his two wives, "A young man wounded me and killed him.
Nope. Try that again.
And I killed him. Anyone who tries to get even with me will be punished 10 times more than anyone who tries to get even with me."
So we have the first instance of self-defense killing as a defense against punishment. Like, I killed a man who was attacking me, therefore I'm innocent. So if there's a punishment for killing Cain, and he was guilty, then the punishment should be even greater if someone tries to get me in revenge. Does this make sense at all?
Yeah.
Because like if random Joe tries to attack Lamech and then Joe dies, Joe's family's still gonna be upset. They're not gonna be like, it was self-defense. Oh, okay, that's cool. That's cool. You should have killed him. You should have killed him. Like you killed a guy, his family's gonna get upset. There's no way around that. So even if it was self-defense, someone might still try and take revenge on Lamech. Even if Lamech wasn't wanting to kill the guy, he still killed the guy. So it's not murder, but random Joe is still dead. Poor Joe. So he's just setting a precedence because this has never happened before. This is the first instance of a self-defense killing. Someone attacks you, you kill them in your defense of yourself. So he's saying, I'm in the right, no one should be able to take revenge on me. Doesn't mean they won't try. Alright, and then Hunter?
It's not even Adam and his wife had another son. They named him Seth because they said God has given us a son to take the place of Abel, who was killed by his brother Cain. Later, Seth had a son and named him Enoch. About this time, people started worshiping the Lord.
Many interesting things in this, but we don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to make it really short. Remember how Cain meant something and Abel meant something? Would it surprise you to know that Seth means something? It probably won't surprise you. It shouldn't surprise you. Seth means set up, appointed. So, like, someone else decided it for me. Does that make sense? So Seth is, in Adam and Eve's view, the way they see it, Seth is something that God intended for them. He set it up. He appointed it. And Seth is born, Eve gets pregnant, right around the same time as Abel died. And so with Abel dead, they have another son right after. They think of Seth as like in place of Abel, kid. In their mind, that's how they see Seth. He's in the place of Abel. We got him instead. Now, I don't know if they had a bunch of sons and daughters. I don't know if they had a bunch of daughters and no sons. I don't know if they had a bunch of sons and no daughters. Like, whatever filled that 120 years, I don't know. But when Seth is born, we know Adam is like 130. So we know time went by between chapter 3 and chapter 4.
Wait, so that means if Adam's 130 and...
Yeah, they had kids when they were 10.
Wait.
But they were created as adults, so it's not that weird.
That's
Like you're made with knowledge in your brain. You're made to be an adult right from day one. No one else ever got to live like that. No one else was ever created as an adult. They were the only ones. They were a very special case. So.
My mom was 10 years old.
Everyone was 10 years old before 10.
He means
No. Okay, so he has a son named Enosh. About this time, people started worshiping the Lord. This sentence has tricked people out for thousands of years. I mean, this sentence is so strange when you think about it. Didn't Adam and Eve just like talk to God in the garden? Didn't they just like know him personally, one-on-one? Didn't we hear Cain earlier when he was like about to become a murderer? God just spoke to him, and Cain's like, whatever. And then like he became a murderer, and then God speaks to him again, and Cain talks back to him. So like people could easily just talk to God apparently. What does this mean? They just started worshiping God all of a sudden about this time. This time. When what? When Abel died and Seth was born? Or when Seth was older and he had a kid named Enosh? Like, what does that mean about this time people started worshiping the Lord? Any guesses? Any thoughts? Random throwing out there into nowheres?
when they did like the physical singing.
Not a bad guess, actually. Not a bad guess at all. The word here actually does talk more about organized worship, more about coming together in a group to worship God. So this would make reference to the closest thing they had back then to like what we do here at church, where you get together and worship God. So the families were growing until eventually there's like grandkids, great-grandkids. We saw it on Cain's family tree. If you track the names, that was actually great-great-great-grandkid. Was already mentioned in Cain's family tree. Great of Adam, I should say. Great of Adam. So there's multiple generations going on at this point. And so now is the time when people are actually coming together and saying, all right, now let's all worship the Lord. Let's all get together and worship the Lord. So this is the first time. And I think it's interesting because what did we see already invented? We already saw harps and flute invented. We saw Adam and Eve talking about how God gives gifts through children. So there is some understanding of the Lord coming through from Adam and Eve who got to talk with him, who got to walk with him. And so one of the first things that's done after all these generations create families big enough to form groups, people get together to worship the Lord. So this right here, what we're doing right now, goes all the way back to the point where there was just barely enough people to do this. That's how long people have been doing this. Let's get together, let's talk about God, let's worship him. I think that's pretty cool. Because Christian churches only started like a couple thousand years ago. But guys, this was like 6,000 years ago. This is a long time. People have been getting together to worship the Lord. I think that's pretty cool. So, all right, in this chapter, we saw Adam and Eve have 2 kids. They fought. One died. The one that died was the one that was worshiping God. I think that's an important lesson to take hold of, to really capture.
Sorry, guys.
So, think about that for a second. The one who was following God, the one who had faith, was the one who died. What does that tell you, like, right off the bat? Right from the beginning, the one who didn't really have God as the center of his life killed the one who did. Think about it, think about it, think about it. Does that set up any expectation for what might be in your life? Nothing? Nothing? No thoughts?
I'm too tired.
Oh, okay, I'll try and spell it out for you. People who don't like God will persecute people who do. It's going to happen. But it's interesting what God does. God doesn't say, as Cain is sinning and Cain is, darkening his heart and his face is showing how angry he is, and God knows he's going to do something wrong. God didn't go to Abel and say, Abel, look out. Your brother's going to get you. God went to Cain and said, Cain, look out. Sin is going to get you. And so this sets up this whole paradigm, this whole structure in my head of when people are not following God, sin will direct them, sin will guide them, sin will take over them. But our job is not to like put up defenses and hide, like, there's sinners out there. God, save me. That's not what happens in the story. In the story, the one who knew best, which was God in this case, went to the one who was about to sin and warned the sinner. And ultimately, the one who was following God paid the price. I think that's the structure that we expect to see as we keep reading the Bible, and that's what we see. Even as you get into the New Testament, God doesn't say to the Christians, after Jesus goes back up into heaven, the church is finally growing, and there's Christians all over the place. God doesn't say to the Christians, all right, guys, build really strong wall churches. Put on doors with good locks and bar the door, and don't let anybody in that church. He doesn't say that. I mean, at that point in history, when the church was finally getting started and it was just starting to grow, Rome said, Christianity is illegal. Let's get all the Christians. That would have been the perfect time to build some strong churches and lock the doors. But that's not what they did. They went, even though they were persecuted, and they said, hey, sinner, can I give you some caution, just like God did way in the beginning? Can I tell you where your sin's going to lead you? Can I tell you what God has for you if you would follow him instead? God reached out to Cain, even though Cain was the dangerous one. Even though Cain was the one going the wrong way, God reached out to Cain. And then what happens? The one who's following God pays the price. So this is what the New Testament teaches us. It teaches us that we are to go to the sinners of the world. We're going to go to the people who don't know God, who don't love God, who don't like us. Share the gospel with them. Share the good news with them. Just that Jesus died and he can forgive them. His death can cover their sins. And then, get ready! Because a lot of the time you share that message and you don't get a sweet, I'd like to follow God. I want to accept the gospel. I want to, follow Jesus. You don't get that a lot. A lot of the time you get persecution. You share what God has for people and then they hate you back. You do that like 10, 20 times and maybe, you get one person who says, I want to believe, I want to follow Jesus. But the Bible doesn't say you're going to get one every time you try. It doesn't say, share the gospel and then run away really fast so they can't get you. It says share the gospel and it's going to hurt sometimes. Share the gospel and it's going to be difficult. Go be with the people who don't love God. Go be with the people who don't know God. Go be with the people who aren't following God and show them God. And then get ready because it might hurt. That's what the Bible teaches us. So that's what I see all the way back in the beginning. And that's what I see all the way in the end of the Bible too. It's the whole way through. Go share with those that are lost and get ready for their response. Sometimes it'll be good. A lot of times it'll be bad. And that's okay. Your job is not to convince people and make them follow Jesus. Your job is just to give them the opportunity. Just to give them the chance. So, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for your word. Thank you that you're teaching us so much in this book of Genesis. Help us to take hold of these messages that you're leaving for us. Go out and apply it in this world. Go out and do these things we're learning in our lives. Help us to be the people that just share the gospel automatically. We just ask people simple questions like, hey, do you know Jesus? Just ask them, do you know what's going to happen when you die? Just ask them, what do you think? Do you think heaven's real? Help us, Lord, to start those conversations. Help us to have those conversations, to have them prayerfully, to have them with you in the room where we're talking to you while we're talking to that person. Lord, give us strength, give us courage to be able to do that, even though they might not respond well. Help us, Lord, to take this as something important, not something to joke about, not something to forget about, but something that's really, really important. With our eyes closed, their heads bowed, if there's anyone in this room this morning who hasn't decided to follow Jesus yet, and you want to do that right now, you're just sitting here and you realize that Jesus died for your sins, the Bible says you can ask him to forgive you. You can ask his payment, his work on the cross, his death to cover you so that you don't have to be punished for your sins. You can actually be forgiven. You can have eternal life. So if you want to do that right now, I just ask you to raise up a hand. Just that you want to follow Jesus, you want to be forgiven, you want to give your life to him. You raise your hand and I'll help you. I'll pray with you. You can talk to him. You can put your faith in him. You can start down that road where you live out this whole life with God in it, talking to him daily. So if you want to do that, just raise up your hand. Lord, bless these junior hires as they go. Help them to be courageous to share your gospel wherever they are. We ask all this in your name. Amen. I love you guys. We almost did it. We're almost on time. 3.5 minutes late. We're so close. Anyways, we are a smidge late, so get on downstairs, find your families. I love you. Have a great Sunday. I will be gone next Sunday. I'm so sorry.
Where will you be?
We're finally going on vacation. We're going to the beach.
Nice.
But yeah, we'll be gone for just over a week. So I'll be gone this next Sunday, and then we'll be back on the next one. I did not take your phone out. There's 3 phones.
No, you took my phone away.
They were all on the bottom, both before and after. There was no change in order whatsoever. All right, we have a winner. Is this you? Cool. You get 1 free thing. It's $1 from our snack bar. If you'd like one. We got all kinds of candy, some drinks, ice cream bars. You get yourself a blue ball? Oh, yeah. All those candies on the left, on the silver and the sign on the otherwise, or no, possible. Yeah.
Every single time.
Oh, you didn't say you're sad? She was lunging forward to the knee. School year's coming back, so we gotta get the room emptied out of our big old foosball table. Sadly.
What do you mean coming back? It's already here.
Oh, okay. Well, Hope Academy hasn't started yet. I think it's like this week or next week. It's while I'm out of town this week, so I forgot to do this in days. So I gotta like find people to like help me do it today. And we're leaving right after second service. Hey Emily, can you text the junior high leaders and see if anyone can come help me move the foosball table today? We get those storage units out of the edge of the parking lot. Yeah, if we take it apart, it gets pretty flat, and we can strap it to the wall. Because there's finances, I think, for points all down the walls. I'm just gonna put them back in the legs. So woo! Not a good time. Just about whacked your head off, kid. Oh, it's gonna be tough. I took your head off. That's amazing. No, I'm taking it apart. So put it in storage. The other one is Spain. Spain went through a huge recession, and so their currency got devalued against everything else. So when you go in and it shows up your currency for their currency, you feel like you're just looking at it. Because like if you go down the street, there's things everywhere are like priced like your $100 store, and it's just not everyday things. It's so the things you want. Fancy meals are like $5 to $10. Yeah, it's insane.
They don't have anything.
You're the fly for them, so come give it to us.
You have two choices, tacos or nachos.
Well, this is good.
Oh, yeah.
Not fancy, but it's good.
Oh yes.
Lovely. The other one, please.
When we were in Mexico, when I went to Mexico, when you say it's aunt's house or something, and she was on the street where down the street was this amazing taco truck, and it was so good. They have these weird little Ubers that just kind of drive around town, and if you like wave at the window, they're like this big.
That's it? You all have the same car?
Yes.
So this is all one company.
Yeah.
People call it a taxi.
Well, I mean, yeah. But like,
I mean, if you wave it down,
the
isn't
weird,
it not a
with the
Uber?
weird little. What's the one called?
I just realized we're gonna be gone in 6 months.
Oh, I thought it already did.
Okay.
Wait,
We're
what?
gonna do it enough where like we might like take it out of the topic, but then we can start
Are
practicing.
you going
Everybody
to
gets
Scott?
We're going on vacation. Okay, so we need to do a pair reserve. We need to do a pair reserve today. As far as you know, Jeremiah has swapped him out. So he's this Wednesday. Fine. I don't even know how to look to do anyway. house skirt folds up and you get to take off the robot. But you kind of have to. You keep the legs off. Nothing keeping the skirt in place. Except for a piece of plastic. Oh wait, that's not true. There's a whole bracket. Yeah. Look for the hole. It's open. It's right there. It started. Good job. No, Daddy's got to take off his legs. I picked her up right there because she was coming out and taking pictures. Yeah, I know. I think it's a me. I don't know about.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I broke this. Oh yeah, I grew up in Mexico. I think they did. Did you hear about the fat bird in London? The what? The fat bird. Bird. As the iceberg. Yes. When you assume it's 70 feet long. No, no, it was made entirely of fat. Well, it was also as tall as a peak, like 8'2". And this is fog and they have to get down there and melt it with like torches, and then pick it apart with shovels and pickaxes. They like just get pieces off, cook it, and then steam. They were mining a cat. It turns out that you get them for some salt in every major city on the planet, right near the restaurant. Good morning. No, Cuneo story. Oh, good. We could play football now that James is tall enough. In the Connex, I don't know if you're in the parking lot.